Good morning, everybody, and we want to thank you all for joining this webinar. I want to thank you, Coseva, for taking us so seriously and ready for the webinar. There were a lot of questions, there were a lot of excitement in the group, and I thought, talking to the company directly and talking to and asking the correct source, the right questions, and coming from the right person was the best idea. And I think webinar was the best way to answer that. So I want to welcome the Coseva company. I want to welcome Roland Johnson, and I want to welcome Dr. Tracy Holtford. And Roland is the executive CFO for Coseva. He has a good finance executive background from Bank of America, and he's the one who actually have got the company started. And Robin, it would be great if you could introduce Dr. Tracy, and we just take it from there.
Thank you, Manisha. I appreciate the invitation, and I appreciate you making arrangements and scheduling this. I know that your initial call, perhaps there was a little bit of trepidation about whether we could make these arrangements with Dr. Holtford, and certainly our interest as a company to ensure that we have conversations with groups of individuals such as yourself and those that are aligned with you that are on this call. Appreciate that interest level. I just wanted to make one comment before I introduce Dr. Holtford regarding Coseva and our commitment to providing what we believe to be the finest zeolite product on the market today. And I'll let Dr. Holtford get into those details, but we have, just so everybody knows, Coseva is one of the sponsors for the Autism 1 conference that is coming up next month in Chicago. And I think most of you may already be aware of that organization, but I know their mission is to really bring to light issues and solutions for the ASD community in terms of being able to provide help and support, as well as even greater support from research and so forth. We were honored to participate, to be a sponsor. We will be there at the conference. In fact, Dr. Holtford will be speaking at that conference. And so we're really excited about that. We believe that this is one of the most important areas of focus, not only just for the families that are experiencing ASD within their own family, but also it is becoming more and more pronounced, as many of you know. And what used to be a sort of a unique situation for people has become quite profound and quite pervasive as it grows as an issue within our society. And it's not just in the Western societies, it's happening in other places. I think we find out more about it in Western societies simply because of the advanced medicine and the doctors and so forth that understand how to diagnose. I just got back from Japan, and there's a large population of Japanese that are dealing with autism in their families, and the results that we're hearing back from these folks in the United States and frankly around the world. We are now selling product in over 45 countries right now, and everywhere from India to the United States to Japan and South Africa, and you name it. Ukraine, in Saudi Arabia, throughout Europe. I mean, we are selling it just about every place that you can imagine. So we're excited about that. So without any further delay, let me introduce Dr. Holtford, and you know, his expertise is, I don't know of anybody in the marketplace, in this industry, I should say, that has more experience than he does in creating zeolite solutions. But it's all about detoxification and some of the topics that he's going to be addressing at the Autism One conference he will also address here. But some of the questions are how are we exposed to environmental toxins? How toxic are we? And it's not just folks that have autism, but it's family members. I think a lot of times as caregivers of family members that have autism, we forget about our own needs, and the caregivers need to make sure and take care of themselves. And we are all exposed to toxins, and so we need to be taking the same product that we may be giving to our loved ones. Dr. Holdford's background, as a boy, he was brought into some accelerated education programs with the Department of Defense in the United States. He had a father and grandfather that were involved with U.S. intelligence, and learned of some of these programs, and he was admitted into that accelerated education program, and he's through his he's achieved and accomplished a number of degrees, including in the fields of inorganic chemistry, biochemistry, nuclear physics, organic chemistry, as well as theology and philosophy. So he comes with a plethora of degrees, but more than that, I think he's got practical understanding of how these things work. Degrees are often just the educational grounds in which to then launch into various careers and various expertises within a particular career field. But for over 15 years, he worked with the Department of Defense, and while much of what he worked on there remains classified, some of the things that we can say is that his responsibilities included developing treatment options for both humans and animals and other things for both the NASA as well as the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And since that time, he's spent over 20 years in private practice, and he consults with a variety of clients on medical issues, developing harmonized approaches to health wellness that combine everything from allopathic, alternative, and nutritional therapies. So without further delay, Dr. Holdford, why don't we turn the time over to you to talk a little bit and start to address some of the questions.
Well, thank you very much for that very kind introduction, Roland, and thank you, Moesha, for having me on the webinar today. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Dr. Holford and Collins, as you said about caregivers, and our Akhil Autism Foundation is for the children and for the caregivers. And Akhil is our only son who has autism, and he's our inspiration behind all this. And when you talk about taking care, yes, I have started taking an Advanced Trs almost a month now, and I would love to afterwards share my experience. And one of the reasons why to make this webinar entire happen, and we have Dr. Deepa Gupta from Delhi here on our attendee list. And chelating or detoxifying our kids back in India is a big struggle. So we are really hoping this really can help our kids back in India. So Dr. Tracy, it's all you now.
Okay. Well, let me first off, I guess, in a really brief description of what the Advance Trs really is, and what differentiates it between a lot of other products on the market. I guess going on now about 10 years ago, I met a very brilliant chemist out of Salt Lake that had found a way to encapsulate very difficult substances inside of water molecules to form a true colloidal suspension. And up to that time, there was no way for anyone to suspend zeolite inside of water molecules because of the very nature of the zeolite molecule itself. It's very problematic to form a colloid with zeolite because it's heavier than water and it tends to fall out very quickly. And that's regardless of the size. So when this gentleman developed this technology, I was introduced to them through some other people, and we started developing things that would, take advantage of this, and zeolite was a very natural one. When you talk about zeolite, the whole magic of zeolite is that it is a cationic exchange agent. So in other words, you have a molecule that at its core is, in this case, magnesium, and it gives that magnesium up for something like a lead, mercury, anything other positively charged contaminants. So it bumps out the magnesium, which helps your muscles, and it brings in the toxin, locks it up tightly, and then about 6 hours later it excretes through your kidneys. And what makes that magic happen is the surface area. And that's where a lot of the preparations, you can have a large amount of powder, but in this spray, there's more surface area that makes it more effective for removing toxins. And it's an order of magnitude higher surface area. It's huge. So as we deal with this, understand that it's a cation exchange mechanism. It's very biologically inert. It doesn't do anything to the body whatsoever as far as interaction. So there's no chemical interaction. But the massive amount of surface area in the Advance Trs product is what makes this magic happen and what helps it be so effective for removing toxins. Marisha, is that understandable or?
Yes. Yes.
And so what questions can I help answer for people?
Okay. Do you want to go with the list, or you just want the parents to raise hand and ask question?
Well, let me start with the list. I'll kind of go over some of that.
Okay.
The first question, I'm looking at the one you just sent me. Is this product safe for children?
Yes.
Yes, it is. Here in the United States, we have a system called GRAS status. It's by the FDA. This product has been granted GRAS status. It's generally recognized as safe. So we have, literally dozens of years of experience with this with kids from the age of infants on. So, yes, it's very safe for children. Dosage-wise, it's not dosage. That term is a medical term here in the United States. We don't deal with dosages. But serving size for a typical 6.5 to, say, 10-year-old will be the same for any adult. You do your, the 5 sprays a day would be about that. Can this be taken without prescription? Most certainly. This is over-the-counter supplement. It's biologically inert, so it's very, very safe. Zeolites have no known side effects because they are biologically inert, so there's no side effects to zeolites whatsoever. If there is a detox reaction, in other words, you start detoxing too heavily, then I would say that your local physician be the one to help you with anything going on with that, because some people are more sensitive than others, and we understand that. 95% of the people will not feel this at all. I'll just put that up front. 95% of the people will not feel anything going on. But I do know that it's working from the very first dosage on. But for those people who do experience some things, I would say their local physician or local person would be able to help them.
So you recommend any binders or any to bind? Like, the question is more about the redistribution. The question more is raised about how can you explain that it really goes into blood-brain barrier?
The technology that we use with encapsulating the zeolite inside of the water molecule is what actually helps across the blood-brain barrier. So in other words, water goes across the blood-brain barrier very easily, and because the body doesn't see the zeolite, it goes in the blood-brain barrier, goes across the blood-brain barrier. The water is used by the brain, which releases the zeolite particle itself. At that point, if it comes in contact with a heavy, a positively charged toxin, like, for example, a mercury or a lead or whatever, then it would exchange the magnesium, bring in to itself the toxin, and the body would very naturally excrete that in about 6 hours, through the kidneys. So it binds very heavily with that, because once it gets a hold of it, it doesn't let go of it. It doesn't cause any problem at all for the kidneys. So But that's the basic cation exchange. It's got to be a positively charged toxin to begin with. If it's a negatively charged toxin, zeolite will not see it. The good thing for us as people is there's very, very few negatively charged toxins. Most of them are positively charged.
Okay, does it get the parasites, bacteria, viruses out?
There are studies that suggest that, and those are on a website called www.pubmed.gov. That's pubmed.gov. You know, there are studies that suggest that zeolites can be affected with viruses and with bacteria, but those studies do not say that they're affected with every single bacteria or virus. So we really don't know in some cases whether it'll work or not in those cases. What it will do is, because these bacteria and viruses do produce basically acidic toxins, it will help remove the toxins at the very least. Whether or not it will help take care of the virus or the bacteria directly is pretty much an unknown at this point.
Okay, because on some of the groups, the parents, few people were posting parasites coming out from the nose, parasites coming out. So we wanted to know, have you seen that?
I personally have never seen that. I have seen cases where through blood work or, and through the urine test, whatever, that the parasitic load has been reduced. But I have never personally seen, especially after one or two uses, parasites coming out, in that kind of en masse. Is it possible? I guess it is. I don't know. I've never personally have seen that.
Okay, so so I wanted to make sure that should we associate that with TRS, that as soon as people are taking TRS, the parasite is coming out. So that was something I wanted to make sure from you.
Yeah, I have never seen that, and I've experienced with this kind of preparation for, like I said now, 7 years. I've never seen that personally, and no one has ever contacted me personally that has experienced that.
Okay, yeah. People are putting me questions. So do you want me to? I have assigned you few questions. Are you able to see those?
Yes, I've got those.
Can I forward you the others also then?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I can forward you the other questions also.
Okay, go ahead and forward those to me, and I'll what I'm limited to is I'm not able to answer if it's a medical question.
Okay.
I can't answer that, because I'm not a medical doctor.
Okay.
So other than that, we're good to go.
Okay. So questions are on your way.
Okay.
Can you see them? I mean, they're on the question panel.
I'm looking. I'm trying to get that.
I'm not seeing any questions, Manisha.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anything right now either.
Okay, so let me see what is the best I can do here. I'll just. Okay, let me just see what is the best I can do. Just put this.
Okay, now I'm seeing some.
Okay.
I'm trying to get this more spread out here so I can actually see this.
Yes.
Okay, the first one is, can TRS be combined with other therapies? The answer to that question is yes, it can. The only therapy it cannot be combined with is a heavy metal-based chemotherapy for cancer, because it will take out the heavy metals. And if you need to have a chemotherapy-based system using the heavy metals applied to you, then just separate it out by 6 hours. because the heavy metal chelation, or not chelation, but the heavy metal chemotherapy treatment will stay in your system about 3 to 4 hours. So give that a couple of hours extra and you'll be fine. But the Advanced TRS will take out the heavy metal chemotherapy agents. Otherwise, there's not any problem with other therapies. The next question I'm seeing is, will there be metal retribution with TRS? And the answer to that is no. There is no metal retribution. Studies have been done on animal studies. There have not been human studies as far as I'm aware, but animal studies have shown that retribution does not happen with heavy metals, with zeolites at all. The other one is, what is the max dosage for kids on spectrum and for adults? Again, dosage is not the correct term. Our usage rate, for a serving is 5 sprays a day, and that's based on the average person. And if you have a specific condition that you know of, zeolites are very safe. You can go up or down as you need to, based on what you feel you need. For those that have that availability to monitor themselves, then I would suggest urine testing for heavy metals to know what you're excreting, and you can base your usage based on that. But in the United States, at least, we can go up to 3 grams per day, which you're not going to get near that much, in the bottle of the TRS because of its size, but you're going to get the equivalent surface area is about 1,000 times more. So the surface area is what's going to be doing the work. So I would urge caution as far as how much you go up and how quickly. But that's kind of like individual results may vary, but it will be it's very safe for kids of all weights. I've got a question here about what is the best way to increase, again, dosing. Again, I would encourage people to get away from the word dosing because it's a medical term. I would say that your usage rate, I would start off with 2 sprays, if it's me personally. 2 sprays about every 4 hours. And that gets you basically 6 hours, 6 sprays in, 6 to 8 sprays in a day. So I would say do it that way. That way you don't get your system overloaded, so you're not going to be removing metals too quickly, and you keep it in your system enough to be effective, over the course of the day while you're awake. And Moesha, if I please jump in here if there's something that's not understandable, okay?
Yeah, sure. So, see, this is something new I'm learning today, that we can do the doses, divide the doses, and we can, yeah, so I think this is good, and I'll definitely jump in, yeah.
Well, zeolite's a very, very safe material because it's non-biologically active. And so when you think about chelation therapies, all the other chelation therapies out there are extremely biologically active. They're pretty harsh. And so if you talk about EDTA or BHA, those kind of chelation therapies, the reason you have to have your bodies, your kidneys checked, all that, is because they're really, they're chemically active and they're doing a chemical stripping. Well, zeolites are very passive in that respect. They're just doing a cation exchange. So if it sees it, it takes it. It doesn't see it, it's not going to do anything.
So
the reality is that, go ahead.
Does it work like a garbage truck, like a glutathione in the body? Just like that, it just goes inside and it takes in and then pulls it out?
Yep, pretty much it. It takes it, picks it up, and just removes it. But it doesn't have any other interaction with the body whatsoever, so that's why it's so safe.
So when we, chelate, we always, also we are worried about the good bacteria and the bad bacteria. And when you talk about bacteria, does it also take away the good bacteria?
In all the studies that have been done, and again, all these are on PubMed.gov, there's been no effect on the good bacteria at all. There's been no effect on the beneficial minerals of the body. In other words, our calcium and all that kind of stuff in our bodies. There's been no depletion of that whatsoever. So as for what our body needs, it protects. What our bodies don't need, it helps to get rid of it.
Got
But
it.
again, all the studies are on PubMed.gov, and there's literally hundreds of studies that have been done that show that this has been very effective and very safe.
Yeah, I mean, zeolite has been there for many, many, many years. The new technology which you have got right now is from Japan. You can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, the zeolites have been around in a real sense since about the 1960s. And the first industry that used these were the nuclear industry for removing and cleaning up the coolant waters and things like that. So the health industry, what we call the health industry and the supplement industry, really didn't get on board to basically this late 70s, early 80s. So all of the studies of any real significance have come about since basically the 80s.
Okay. So I know zeolite comes in different forms, and this is the TRS is the nanotechnology, and if I compare that to glutathione, I know glutathione also comes in various forms, and the best way to take glutathione as a whole molecule into the body so it doesn't break. So if some of the people say don't take the spray and just take the zeolite, are they going to see the same results?
Every person is going to see a little bit something different. Everything from I don't feel a thing to I feel a lot. And the results, on an empirical sense, what I can test is I know that the zeolite will start removing toxins from the very first dosage. And that's going to be regardless of who you are. How much and all that depends on your own personal, toxic load.
Okay, that makes sense because everybody's body is different.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I can't predict what the individual will experience. What I can say is I know this product works because I've got too many years of testing with it and too many years of use with it that have proven that it works.
Okay, you can take further questions.
I've got a question here about behavioral changes
Uh-huh.
and with autism, and be quite frank with you, I have no idea. I've heard of children with autism having really miraculous results. I've heard children with autism not having anything at all that's noticeable. Again, we don't know enough about what causes autism and what areas of the brain are affected to know what's really going to happen. And I don't wish to mislead anyone either. There have been many people that have been there, frankly, I feel criminal in their claims about what this zeolites can do and won't do. And the zeolites are very straightforward. But as far as what will happen with your child and you start using it, I have no idea other than if they do have a toxin in their system that the zeolite can remove, their bodies will be better off. They will be healthier. As far as behavioral changes and these other questions, I don't know.
We do see I would not say that I'm seeing a trend, but initially as I was following the whole group and I could just make a perception from that, and I may be wrong, that the children who are extremely high functioning, who have a lot of language, and those who were taking TRS, they were really seeing great results, and especially the younger children and very high functioning. So again, this is my perception, and I might be wrong. So, have you seen something like that, or do you agree, or can you more explain about it?
Misha, I've seen the whole spectrum. I've seen, literally, parents will put their kids with autism on this product and they don't see a thing. I've seen, a spectrum of changes that are positive, and there's been that one or two, child that those 2 or 3 children out there that have just made miraculous products, process. I just don't know how to predict it. I can't tell the individual parent what their child will experience.
Okay.
As a trend, I think is positive. I can't prove it.
Okay. Yeah. So again, the difference between Advanced Trs, Zeolite, and other Zeolite.
You know, the reality is there's three things that makes Advanced TRS stand out. One is its amount of surface area. It has, if you take a comparable, and it's hard to visualize, but if you take a tablespoon of powdered zeolite, that's going to be approximately 3 grams, roughly. The surface area of that tablespoon is about 1,000 times less than the surface area that's in the bottle of Advanced TRS. So it's hard to visualize, but there's so much more surface area inside the Advanced TRS than you can get with that powder. The second advantage that the Advanced TRS has is its purity. You know, when I talked with Roland and I talked with the people over at Coseva, you know, one of the things that I was talking about is that you have to have the purity of the product for it to be the most effective. And they went with a product called Hydrix R, which is a synthetic zeolite clinoptilolite that is totally pure. So it has that advantage of purity, so there's not any problems with the zeolite taking up the toxins because of being previously, you know, the sites being previously used. So between the purity and the surface area, I can't find anything else out there in the market that comes even close.
The natural mind, somebody has brought up questions you're talking about is the natural, I'll just forward that to you. Is this a natural minded zeolite? I didn't understand that.
Well, there are some products out there which are naturally mined versus synthetic. And the real issue you have, especially with the powdered products that I've tested out there, are that they are very dirty. They have very high levels of lead and mercury and all kinds of things in them already. And those are extremely difficult to clean up and very expensive to clean up. So most companies don't bother. So again, the purity of the product with the Advanced TRS, along with the amount of surface area it has inside that bottle, it just makes it such a different product that is pretty unique.
Okay, yeah, so more questions are...
Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Now, the ion exchange, I saw the question here, does it leave, the magnesium in the body? Yes, it does. It will leave magnesium in the body. That, the amount of magnesium it leaves in the body based on the amount of you're using every day is clinically insignificant. But yes, when it takes up the toxin, it will leave the magnesium behind. So I was asked. There's a question here about additional support if if it's taking up the toxins.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of additional support you need with regards to kids? I would say just good food and good water. The additional support is, again, this product is so different than people are used to because it's so biologically inert that it's not going to cause a reaction that will strip anything out other than toxins. So you're not going to be removing the beneficial minerals. You're not going to be removing beneficial elements from the body. So you're not going to need a lot of additional support other than what you would normally give your children anyway.
So when you say the magnesium leaves, do they have to take the magnesium supplement or something?
No. I mean, the magnesium, the stuff behind from the Advanced Trs is clinically insignificant. So, if you need magnesium, you'll need to take a magnesium supplement. That'll be based on your blood work. taking the Advance Trs will not replace that supplement.
Okay.
Now, I also got a question here: is why twice a day?
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's more to help your body keep the zeolite in the system as much as possible, so it does most work as possible. In other words, if you take too much of a good thing at one time, your body can't handle it. So sometimes more is not always better. So going in smaller increments more often during the day is actually better for you and actually more effective, especially more cost-effective as far as your detoxification efforts than taking a huge amount at one time. So spread it out over several times a day just keeps that zeolite in your system for longer, and it has a better chance of removing toxins, around the day. The other question is, how do we test for what we're excreting? And the easiest way to do that is a urinalysis for heavy metals. And what you'll find is that your urine test for heavy metals, the heavy metals start going up as you start excreting out the heavy metals. That's the easiest test. There are blood tests that can do the same thing. I just think the urine tests are a lot more non-invasive. And the other question I've got is, how long do you suggest we continue with the zeolite? And my answer to that is, how long do you wish to breathe?
Okay.
The reality is, in our modern world, that we can't escape the wind. And we are being exposed globally to toxins. And it's not us, perhaps, it's our neighbors. Our water migrates, our wind migrates, these things migrate, and they migrate the toxins to us. It's not relevant whether you live out in rural areas, you live in the cities, suburbs, it doesn't really matter. We're exposed to a huge number of toxins every day. I'm going to give out some numbers here real quick so that, let me see if I can get to this.
Do you want to show something on the screen?
I don't have it available. I wasn't prepared for that.
Okay.
So I'm just going to give us just a few numbers, and this is from the World Health Organization.
Okay.
Each year, 3 million children under the age of 5 die to environmentally related diseases. Respiratory infections kill 1.6 million children a year under 5. And these are, indoor and outdoor air pollution. 1.5 million children a year die of diarrhea caused by the environmental conditions. Lead exposure. There are 600,000 new cases of developmental disabilities annually due to lead exposure. There's, goodness, this is a broad range. 20,000 fatalities, including children, from improper storage of pesticides. A mean of 5 million cases of pesticide poisoning every year, and a lot of those are children. Cancers. We don't know the exact, ratio, but as a guess, they're saying about 19% of all cancers are attributed to environmental factors. 1.3 million deaths a year from children. And these are very sobering statistics. And Advance Trs can really help us with a lot of this. But as we go through this, you have to understand that we can't escape the toxins. I was talking with Roland this morning, and they're getting smoke from a fire in Siberia, and they're in Salt Lake City, Utah. That's how far this stuff travels. We're exposed to toxins through our food, our water, air pollution, household cleaners, transportation, skin care. We cannot escape it. So that's how come we need to continue with the Advance Trs product and keep ourselves cleaned up. It's not going to end. So this is something I'm pretty passionate about. It's just one of those things that we just need to stay on. It's going to be good for us. So I'll get off my soapbox now and get back to questions.
Okay.
Is that understandable, Moesha? I mean, is that?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, everyone, if you have any questions, please raise hand. I can just unmute them. I have questions coming. As I have the questions are coming, I'm sending it to Dr. Tracy.
Okay.
So,
I got a question here about which metals can it bind and throw out? It can bind and throw out any metal that's in free form or ionic form in your body. And that's a very precise definition. For example, I'm going to use this in both cases here. If you have mercury, lead, cadmium, arsenic, those kind of things, those kind of metals in your body will most certainly take those out. If you have excess iron in your body, you can help remove excess iron because that metal is not being utilized by the body, it's not being properly bound, so the zeolite can see it. If you don't have excess iron, just normal hemoglobin, for example, the zeolite can't see it because that molecule is neutrally charged. So it can attach to any metal that's not being properly used in your body. Your calcium, your magnesium, your zinc, those kind of metals, because those are metals, your sodium, normally will not be seen by zeolite because the body takes that metal, processes it, and forms it into a salt, which is neutrally charged. The only thing zeolites will remove are toxins, which are positively charged. Okay? And can this be used while doing IV chelation? Sure, it can. There's no issues with that. Just check with your medical person that's doing the IV chelation and then make sure they're comfortable with it.
one of the question is about the breast cancer per people. I think you answered it. Can TRS help her anyway? And I know you told to put.
Yeah, that's a medical question, which I really can't answer. What I would say is that if there's some studies out there that show it can be, in this particular person's case, I don't know. I would say try it and see how it works.
Okay.
But I really don't know. There's not enough studies done with cancers that are definitive enough to say for sure. So we can't really say.
Okay. There's one more question on your way.
Okay, I'm looking here. Does Advance Trs suppress the body's own detoxification system? No, it does not. Would it make you addicted? Again, absolutely not. There's no biological activity for addiction or for suppression of your immune system. So no, those are not a problem whatsoever.
Can it remove aluminium?
It can remove aluminum, yes.
Okay.
And I'll say that because aluminum, the metal, for example, what's in deodorants and what's in certain antibiotics and things like that, it will remove. So yes.
Okay. One more question is on the sluggish lymphatic system. I think I've just forwarded that to you.
Yeah. I don't know. You can use it with sluggish lymphatic system. Sure. I mean, that's not going to be a problem. This is going through the kidneys. If you're walking at all, and unless you're totally immobilized, and by that I'm talking about like someone in an iron lung immobilized, you're still going to be moving fluid through your kidneys. And as long as there's fluid movement through the kidneys, as long as you're urinating properly, there's no problems. The only time I would say that if you have a issue at all, and it's a much more serious issue, that at that time the Advanced Trs is not going to be the problem. But if you have renal failure where you're not urinating, that's a problem. I've had people on diet different medical protocols for cleaning the kidneys, dialysis and things like that, which are still using, this product. So that's not going to be a problem either, as long as you can have some kind of elimination system.
Basically, if the kidneys are not working fine, and once you do the zeolite, definitely, it's going to give more. Like as we do in chelation, when we would chelate with pharmaceuticals, we would make sure the kidney markers and liver markers are good, and then if they're good, then you chelate. So, is that what something you would recommend?
With the zeolite products, that's really not necessary. It doesn't have any biological effect on the kidney, so you're not going to have the same effect like you would have, for example, EDTA or those kind of chemicals. So they're not going to put the stress, they're not going to create the proteins which cause those problems. The only person I'm talking about is someone who is in renal failure to the point of being on dialysis.
Oh, okay.
If they have renal failure to the point of being on dialysis, then they need to have their heavy metals in their urine checked, not because it's going to hurt the person, because it's going to affect the membrane they use for the dialysis. It's not going to hurt the person whatsoever, but you want to make sure your dialysis is effective.
Okay. The next question, I think, is on your way about the anemic person on iron supplements.
You get down to that. Let's see. I am not seeing that.
I can just forward that again. Can this be taken by anemic person or on iron supplements?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Again, the form of iron in the supplements is organic. It's not a metal. In other words, you're not eating rust. In other words. So, yeah, that's not going to be a problem whatsoever.
Right. So, Dr. Tracy, if you're seeing the questions, I don't know if you can filter them with received. If you just filter them with received, it will just sort, because I am sending questions to you. And I can do that on my side. I don't know if you can see on your side.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is working properly for me, but I'll do my best. I'm seeing one question. Sorry about that. I'm seeing one question here about someone who has dental procedures done, like crowns or braces, or metal equipment in their body. Will the Advance Trs have any problem with those? And the answer is no, it won't.
The amalgam question, are you talking about the amalgam?
It's the very last question I see on my list here. It's if someone has dental procedures done.
Oh, yes, yes. The crowns or braces. Yeah, so, okay. Got it.
Yeah, the Advanced Trs will not have any effect on those whatsoever.
And is for autism, when should we start it? As soon as a child is diagnosed, or is there any?
Well, I've had people start their children from the time of birth on. That's a question that the parents are going to have to come up with as far as answering.
Okay.
But it's safe for very, very young infants.
Okay. To take it away from food, it can grab nutrients. It sounds it can grab nutrients as they're being used by the body.
Normally, I say just separate eating with this by like 30 minutes or so, and that's just my personal preference. The reality is that the food you eat and the process that goes through is going to be much slower than what the zeolite goes through the body, and so it's really not an issue. But I just normally separate my stuff out by 30 minutes or so from meals. And I've got a question here about, can we start TRS without removing the amalgam-based tooth fillings? And the answer is yes, you can.
Okay. The tooth fillings. Okay.
Now, if there's a leaking filling, for example, what we call a leaking filling that's putting mercury into your system, then the Advance Trs will help remove that mercury out of your body.
Okay. There's a question on TRS zeolite and with probiotics.
With probiotics,
Mm-hmm.
there's not going to be an issue with Advance Trs and probiotics whatsoever. The probiotics that are beneficial for our bodies do not produce the acidic toxins that are problematic, and so yeah, there's not going to be a problem with those whatsoever.
Okay.
And again, those studies, if you want to check on those, are on PubMed.gov.
Another question is, how can we know it's helping or whether to continue or not?
You know, personally, unless you're doing some kind of urinalysis or blood work to check the heavy metal excretion, most people will not know it's working. I can know from a chemist standpoint that it's working, but that individual may or may not know because I may not feel anything. So if that's a question, then I would say do a heavy metals test on their urine and let them see what the results.
Okay. Can you see the question on what type of charge the certain bacteria has?
Bacteria, yes, I can. The bacteria in itself does not have a charge. Okay. The components of a bacteria may have a charge. So, in other words, if you have for example, botulism bacteria, there is a component inside the nucleus of that bacteria which is positively charged. You know, if the zeolite is uptaken by that bacteria and it removes that positively charged, then it stands a chance, according to the studies at least, of killing that bacteria. But the bacteria itself doesn't have a charge. So there are components inside the bacteria which may have a charge, or there's toxic byproducts, you know, which is the waste products of the bacteria, which can be charged. And the zeolite will help remove those. But the bacteria itself isn't going to be charged.
Okay. 2 more questions on your way.
If the first child has autism, would we start the second child on it by birth? You know, I don't know if the zeolite product started at birth will prevent autism or not. I have no way of knowing that. I have no way of knowing that it will help one way or the other with any other health issue. What I do know is that if that child is kept as toxin-free as possible while they're growing up, they're probably going to be better off. And that's just a logical assumption. So I don't know, what, how to answer that question. I would say if it's my child, I would start it from birth. That's all I can say. If it's my personal child, I would do that. It would not be for prevention of autism. It would not be for prevention of anything other than the buildup of toxins inside that child.
So basically, this can be used for everybody, just to get the toxic load out, and because
Yes.
it's so safe,
Yeah.
and you have seen if it works on the young children, and the children who are born, definitely the toxicity. So why not? They can, but it's a parent choice, and to understand how the zeolite works, what zeolite is, and do their research, and then with the parent gut feeling. Is that something would you advise?
For me, Moisha, I take zeolites every day. I take the Coseva product every day. And I live in Springfield, Missouri, which is pretty rural. But I know that it's helping my body remove toxins. I drive in a car. I'm outside, in the air. So I take mine every day. This is a product that works for every single person. Regardless of your conditions, regardless of your age, regardless of your toxic load, this will work for you.
So, as
So,
you are talking, I would like to share my personal experience because that is one of the questions here. That as soon as I started taking the Advance Trs, one small spray in the morning, the moment I took it for three days, I definitely had a very slight headache. I definitely had a very slight stuffy nose, but very slight only for some time. I did feel much better. My irritation and I was able to handle them much better. Um, uh, it's I think that it really helped my mind. And when the moment after a week I went on two sprays in the morning, I really had a very bad severe headache for two days, and I had to take Advil for that. Then I backed off and I came back to one small spray two times a day. And so far, I am on that and it's helping me, and I can definitely feel the behaviors. I mean, it's not that I am a very agitated person, but I think I was feeling very happy, and I think I was able to have more control on my mind. And yeah, so that's what my personal experience.
Moshe, I'll give you my experience as well, because when I was developing this product, I used myself as my, my test subject, and I took an entire bottle at one time.
Oh, wow.
Just drank it down, and I didn't feel anything at all. Now my urine was really, dark, discolored, and smelly, and things like that. So I was knowing something was coming out, but I didn't have a headache. I didn't feel bad, and that's after an entire bottle. So everyone's experience are going to be so individualistic that it's really hard to say how they'll respond.
Uh, Now, I know there are many there are many research studies on zeolite. Are you interested in doing any open label or any clinical trial for advanced TRS?
Well, that'd be something for Coseva corporates to advance and see what they want to do.
Okay. Uh,
I'm not in that position to answer that question because it's their product.
okay. One more question here is about the mercury. Can you see that?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so check it
Mercury in viruses. If the proper blood test is done, mercury will always show up. I'll just put that out there. If it's a mercury digestion blood test, they'll see mercury there, whether it's bound to a virus or not. But to answer the question directly, if mercury is in the body, attached to a virus, encapsulated in fat cells, in the brain, it doesn't matter. If the Advance Trs comes in contact with it, it will remove the mercury. The bound state of the mercury or not is not an issue with the cationic exchange. And again, there's not many tests on that, but there are some tests that show that. They're also listed on PubMed.gov.
Okay. One is on the seizure medication.
I have no idea. That have to be discussed with them and their doctor. I don't know what the medication is or what's in it, so I don't know how to answer that. So, yeah. Well, technically, I don't see an issue. There may be something there I don't know about. Again, I'm not a medical doctor, but I will say that needs to be checked with their medical professional and check against the ingredients and make sure that it can be done.
The next question is on what a charge is. Like, what has a charge if bacteria has no charge? Can you see that?
Well, yeah, I'm looking. I'm trying to understand the question. Doesn't mean that all living organisms don't have a charge. Well, no, that's not quite true because there are electric eels which could definitely put out a charge. So there's different cells that can, be charged. the positive charge, and where can you read about that at, is in almost any chemistry, textbook. We'll go into that. You'd have to know enough chemistry to understand, to be able to calculate out the noble charge of the material you're looking at. So in other words, if you have an XYZ molecule, if you can calculate out the noble charge, that will tell you whether or not that molecule is positively charged or not. And if it's positively charged, then it can be removed by zeolite. If it's not, then it will not be. But that's what you'd have to understand, is how to calculate out the noble charges. And the internet, a lot of times you can just type in on Google or whatever, what's noble charge of whatever you're dealing with, and you'll get the answer. So I would say a quick internet search would probably be the best way to answer that specific question.
I have one question is about it goes into the cell, right? It goes into the intracellular level inside the cell. Okay. So can you talk a little bit about epigenetics? I don't know if you can with.
At the present time, there's no studies whatsoever with how zeolites affect epigenetics. So, sorry about that. So I don't know, specifically what is your question. I might be able to answer, but in what area of epigenetics are you asking about results with zeolite?
Because it goes into the cell level and it makes them does it. I mean, I may be I'm still trying to learn more, but maybe it may not be a right question, or maybe I'm not putting it correctly. But epigenetic is like, can it go and make any changes at the genetic level?
No, I mean, zeolites are totally biologically inert. So even on that cellular level, they're not going to change anything other than take out the toxins. So, my understanding is that zeolites will not be able to affect a cell on the epigenetic level because there's no biological activity for it to do so.
Okay. So it will take care of the cell extracellular level as well as the internally.
Correct. I mean, you'll go inside the cell to remove the toxin, but it's not going to affect the cell biologically.
Got it. Okay. Two more questions are there. What are the higher doses of Trs Coseva can be taken?
Let me see if I can.
Yeah.
What are the doses?
Mm-hmm. Higher doses.
I've had people take anywhere from, a partial spray in a glass of water all the way up to 18 sprays a day.
Wow.
So, I mean, now the person taking the 18 sprays a day had a very identified heavy metal issue. They were being monitored by their physician. But as far as usage rate, again, you're not going to, it has to be based on your individual situation. And so there's not a general guideline that I can say that is recommended or whatever as far as usage. Is it safe? Yes. But what your level is, and what you need is going to be very individualistic versus someone else.
Are all the zeolites same?
Are all the zeolites the same?
Mm-hmm.
No. And the difference is the cleanliness, the purity, and the surface area.
Okay.
So, it really is a, if you want the purest product, so you're not going to be, purity in zeolite is equivalent to effectiveness. So if a zeolite is not pure, it's going to have less sites that are active for that ionic exchange process to take place. So the purer the material, the purer the zeolite, the more active sites that are available in order to remove toxins. If you're taking zeolites which are dirty and don't have those active sites, then you're not going to have any effect of removing toxins. If you're taking a zeolite which is too large in particle size, then it will never get out of your colon. In other words, it'll just go in your colon, it'll just pass on through your colon, it'll never be, it'll detox the colon, but it won't get anywhere else. So size makes a difference, the surface area makes a difference, and purity makes a difference. So not all zeolites are created equal in that respect.
Again, any studies on advanced TRS versus chelation, which is better?
There are studies out there with zeolites and chelation methodologies, but zeolite is a chelation methodology, so they don't say which one is better. It depends on your individual medical condition. I personally know that zeolites are the safest way to chelate heavy metals out of the body. Is it the best for you, the individual? I don't know how to answer that. So can it safely replace pharmaceutical, processes? I don't know. I mean, again, there are certain medical conditions where you may need more. This product was made for an over-the-counter commercial market. It was made for the average person. So I would say that for the average person, this is a very good product. For someone who has medical needs different than that, that have to be evaluated between them and their physician.
Okay.
And as far as where we source our zeolite from, if Roland wants to answer that, that's fine. But I consider that fairly proprietary as far as our process. But that's up to Roland to answer that one.
Yeah.
And is zeolite developed in a lab by humans, or is natural? This is a synthetic zeolite. Okay. And I've got another question. Is there any good books I can read about zeolites? If you Google zeolite books on books on zeolite, you'll come up with thousands. There are some very good books out there. There are very many people who are very knowledgeable about zeolites. And then there's people out there which are somewhat biased. But there's some good books out there from the academia, and I can pass those on to Roland as far as a reading list and get that out there.
So,
Hey,
yeah, go
Manisha,
ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
this is Roland here. Just wanted to interject. I know we're running out of time here, but I did want to just mention that we have a white paper that Dr. Holdford has prepared regarding Advanced Trs, and it discusses many of the things that he's mentioned based upon the questions that have come in. It really does talk about the science, and I think probably one of the best sources to know what he's referring to regarding the studies in PubMed.gov would come from that white paper. And I think you've got a copy of that. I'm fairly sure that you do. If you don't, we can certainly make sure that you get a fresh copy of it. But that would be something that would be useful, perhaps, for those on the call to obtain further information. It is fairly technical, but I have the sense that many that are on this call, based upon the questions, have had vast experience with zeolites and have a technical background, perhaps. And I think it would be helpful or interesting at the least. So I would suggest that. One other question that I was going to ask for Dr. Holdford regarding most people don't feel a difference, and the same reason we take nutritional supplements on a daily basis is because we believe that we are healthier as a result. But we have heard countless stories and examples of individuals that have had profound results in terms of reactions and so forth. Those reactions are primarily positive. We rarely get a negative response, but in the autism community, I would just mention that both in the United States and in Japan, where we have focused much of our boots on the ground, and worldwide as well, globally, we are hearing profound results for those individuals that have autism. And in fact, I met a girl in Japan last week when I was there, and she happens to speak English. Her father was Australian. Her father passed away recently. She's a young girl. She's 10 years old, and you would not believe that she has been diagnosed with autism based upon the results that she's getting from Advance Trs. Now, her mother's the best person to respond in terms of how she was previously and how she is today in that change, but it's remarkable. And that's just one example. There are many. There's a 39-year-old man with autism in Japan who was just profound results. He used to have misbehavior and those kinds of things, and he's become much more pleasant, and he's not as adversarial towards. So he's a fairly low functioning individual. And then there's others that are fairly high functioning, and they can see their ability to connect the dots, so to speak, in terms of their schoolwork and those kinds of things. So it's pretty amazing what we've seen. But as Dr. Holdford and I have spoken, the bottom line is everybody's going to have a unique response. It depends on where they are and where they're headed, and how much of that product they're able to take. If they're able to take more, they're probably getting rid of more, but at the same time, they may not be able to take very much at all, and the results still have been profound for many individuals. So it's interesting. The question I have for Dr. Holdford is particularly for those who don't necessarily feel a difference, but they wanted to be able to see what's changing in their body. Are there easier tests than having to go to a medical doctor to get a blood test or a urine test or what have you? Are there, like a hair test? I know in Japan you can buy something in the drugstores without going to a pharmacist or a doctor, where they can actually do a hair sample, and we've seen results from that by certain individuals using Advance Trs. Is that something available in the United States?
You know, there are some in the United States. There are some testing for hair analysis and those things available. They're subject by lab. In the United States, there's a lab, provider called Any Lab Test Now that can do blood work or urine test or hair analysis. The issue with the hair analysis is that it takes longer for results to show up. So that once you get on the product, you need to wait for several months before you can do a hair analysis to see if it's truly being effective or not, where urine analysis or blood work is more immediate.
Okay. How much longer? How long? A month or two, or is it longer than that?
It's usually analysis? About 3 months, because you have to be able to let the hair grow out, and depending upon how fast your hair grows.
Got it.
The hair has to grow out to a length so that you can cut the hair close by the scalp, and then have that tested, because the older the hair is, the more history it contains.
Got it. Thank you.
So, yeah, there are some things that can be done, but it just depends on if you have an immediate need or not. If there's an immediate need to know that answer, then your analysis or blood work is still your best bet.
Got it.
Okay. I think there's just one more question here. I have forwarded that. Good idea to combine zeolite with algae. They're supposed to grab in metals too.
As far as combining the zeolite with algae, there's no harm in that whatsoever. Will it help with that process? It may. There's not been any real studies done on the combination with algae and zeolite, so I don't know for sure. It would come to the head, and I don't think it would hurt anything at all. So.
Okay. So
but there's been not many studies done specifically with algae or zeolite, so I don't know the specific answer. But I can't see any reason why it would be a problem.
Okay. Yeah. So it's already 12:15. I don't know how much time you have, but.
I'm sorry, Moisha, I didn't hear you.
I said this 12:15, and we have covered a lot of questions here. How much time do we have? And I don't know about the questions which we already sent. How will those be answered?
Well, I can go. I've got a few more minutes. I'm just kind of going through, some of the questions from the previous list. See if there's anything here that I can answer.
Okay.
a lot of the questions are previously were medical questions, and so I'm having, I'm just not able to answer the medical questions. There's a question I have here is, how is the Advance Trs different from using Dmsa or LAA combinations? And the big difference is that the zeolite in Advance Trs is biologically inert, where the Dmsa and LAA combination are very biologically active. So there's a question here about, is there a temperature storage requirement? The only thing you can't do is you cannot boil this material. So if it's over 100 degrees Celsius, it will destroy the product. But as long as it's not being boiled, that temperature, I'd say if you stay, below 90 degrees Celsius, you're all right with this. We have done studies where it's been frozen and been fine, so freezing is not a big issue. But boiling it will remove the zeolite. And is there expiration date for the bottle? I think we put a year's expiration date because that's a rule here in the United States. We have to have an expiration date. In reality, the zeolite's not going to go anywhere. And what would happen is after a while it would taste stale, but it'd still be very, very effective. And there's a question here, do we have to add supplementation for minerals and vitamins, if you're taking the Advance Trs? And the answer is, if you're not having to supplement before, you won't need to supplement after. If you were supplementing before, then I would say stay on that. It says, does this product, take care of ammonia and toxins released by parasites? If those products, and toxins are positively charged, then yes, it would. I'm just kind of taking a very. There's another question here. Can I dose with colloidal silver when I'm dosing with zeolite? And if you're using colloidal silver for whatever reason and you use zeolite, the zeolite will remove the silver. So if you are using colloidal silver as an antibiotic or for whatever reason, you need to separate those out by at least 3 or 4 hours, because it will remove colloidal silver from your system, and so make the colloidal silver ineffective. We already answered that it will remove aluminum. That's true, it will. So anyway, are there any other questions? I'm not seeing anything else at this present time that I can really answer.
Okay, I just have a last question about the headache. Is that something you can answer? Like, why the headache? Because I had learned about it. I had the similar kind of feedback from few parents when a couple of years back about zeolite. When they would use zeolite, definitely there was a headache or a headache. Yeah.
The only thing that I can think of, and this is just a guess on my part, so please take it as such, is that the body is producing excess histamine, which is causing a low-grade headache, with the detoxification of the zeolite. And there's a couple of cases that I've read about where the histamine levels, which are tied to our digestion, is that when we take the zeolite in, it can produce a little bit of excess histamine levels, which are which we need for our digestion. Actually, we can't digest food without them. So that's the only thing I can think of which will be causing that.
Oh, okay. Um, Storing, can this be stored in a fridge? Or
I'm sorry, Moisha, I didn't quite understand that.
can be, this has to be stored in a refrigerator? TRS?
As far as storage,
In the refrigerator?
no, it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
Okay.
It can be kept at room temperature. Again, you want to keep it from getting too hot. So, in certain cars, for example, if it's 110 degrees outside Fahrenheit, and you leave it in your car is going to get to be well above 170, 180 degrees Fahrenheit. That might cause some of the zeolite to fall out of suspension and not be effective. Not being get to you. So keep it from being too hot, but you don't need to store it in the refrigerator.
Okay, and the one more is about does it remove important minerals? Which
No, it does not remove the important minerals at all. And there's a lot of studies based, studies on the PubMed.gov that show that it does not remove beneficial minerals whatsoever.
Okay. So I think those were the questions right now, and I think last one more question is for Roland. Roland, I don't know, can you see that question?
I haven't been able to see any of the questions actually, so. Oh no, there I see it.
Okay, I'll just email.
I guess I only see what you sent to me.
Yes, yes.
Can you sell this directly or through a process different from an MLM setup? Generally, we have not done that. We have. There are some practitioners, however, health practitioners who perhaps we sell it to them, but we typically go through a vetting process to ensure that they are a legitimate health practitioner with some kind of a evidence that they are either registered business license or they've got a degree to do those kinds of things. But generally speaking, we do it through the MLM model. I know that for those that aren't interested in becoming a distributor by in terms of recruiting other people to become distributors as well, if they just want to use it, then that certainly works as well. They don't have to recruit other people. All they have to do is purchase it and use it. They get the wholesale price if they're a distributor. Otherwise, that's the model. But that's the approach that we use. But like I said, there is that other avenue, like I mentioned, in terms of practitioners. But and then there's one more question. What is the difference between zeolite in Capsule versus Advance Trs? That's actually a question probably for Dr. Holdford, although it says here that that capsule form of zeolite is out of the market because of problems with FDA guidelines. I have no idea what that product is or what the issues were with the FDA, but if it's in a capsule form, I would just imagine that the molecule is much larger. Maybe it's just a micronized zeolite crushed up finely as finely as they can, but it still would not compare to the nano-sized molecule that Advanced Trs is using. I'll turn the rest of the answer to that to Dr. Holdford, though.
Yeah, I would say this, that in order for a molecule to get through the colon, to the villi of the colon, it's got to be about 0.3 micron. And to reduce a powder or a mineral down to that size, it has to be a wet process. You cannot do it dry. So if this was a dry powder, it'll be well above that size, and it would be basically stay in the colon and wouldn't do anything else. I am familiar with this company, and the reason they got in trouble with the FDA because they were making medical claims which couldn't be substantiated. They were just, and they had a product which was very highly contaminated as well. But that being said, as far as the actual product itself, between zeolite to zeolite, it's a size and purity issue again. They had, inside that capsule was very little surface area with a very impure product, so your effectiveness would not be that high. Otherwise, I don't know more than that.
Okay, so I think all the questions here, you answered it. So
Wonderful.
So
Thank you so much for setting up this call, Manisha and Dr. Holdford.
Yeah, thank you.
And,
My pleasure.
thank you. Yes, very much so.
It was wonderful.
It's been very good to hear these questions, and we welcome anybody with further questions to reach out to either to us directly or through Manisha. And if any of you, if you're going to be at the Autism One conference next month, please stop by our booth and also come listen to Dr. Holdford, who's speaking on Thursday afternoon, the 21st of May there in Chicago. So we're looking forward to that, and looking forward to getting this product into your hands, and we would love to hear back from anybody who's having experiences, favorable or otherwise. We'd like to know, and very, very much interested in your success.
I want to thank you, everybody. This is all recorded. I will talk to Roland about how would you want to get that uploaded, and I'm getting a good feedback. Really appreciate if you all put a feedback on Akil Autism Foundation page and just like that, and give us your more suggestions, and we would love to get such topics and such speakers online. So I want to thank you so much. I want to thank you, Dr. Tracy. I want to thank you, Roland, for taking. Like, I know we were talking, and I was unsure when we do it, and I'm glad Dr. Holford could attend, and I think it was a good success.
Wonderful. Thanks so much.
Okay, take care.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.